Hello and welcome to My Media Live, an exciting new feature from the World Media Group. My name is Arif Durrani and we'll be interviewing some of the industry's most inspirational leaders with the hope of getting some insights into their own career journeys and personal motivations too. We'll be sure to ask them for advice for those starting out in the industry today, so do stay tuned. Now, who better to launch this global initiative with than arguably the most globally successful and internationally minded marketing leader of them all, the founder of S4 Capital and the founder of WPP. We're here with none other than Sir Martin Sorrell. Sir Martin, many thanks for joining us today.
Hopefully this will be interesting, Arif.
Well, I hope so. It's all on you, I'm afraid. We have 9 questions as compiled by the World Media Group members. Right. Answer them however you choose fit. So question number 1, what does the media industry mean to you?
Well, I was thinking about it because I was looking at the questions before. You kindly sent them to, so I got a chance to think about them. And I thought actually what it means to me is basically fun and interest. I mean, the reason for that is my dad said to me, find an industry that you enjoy and then find a company inside that industry that you enjoy, build a reputation in it, not the sort of reputation to be interviewed by Arif on things like this, but, just that people thought you knew what you were doing. And then if you fancied, my dad said, around the age of 40, I mean, that advice he gave me was probably when I was about 30, 31, 32. If you fancy it around the age of 40, go off and do something on your own. I mean, he didn't do that because he lived and worked in the same company for the whole of his life, whole of his working life. So I would say, the answer to that is that, the media industry is really interesting. It's rather like entertainment and sport. When I went into it and I didn't make the intervention about Saatchi's lightly. I mean, I went there in part because I like the industry, and it reminded me a bit of the sports and entertainment industry, that you were the only barrier, particularly in the UK, was not connection or who you knew, but the strength of your latest idea. So, barriers to entry, were a phone and somewhere where you could answer the phone or make a phone call. It was no more, no less than that. So that's the reason. I mean, fun and interest and demanding and, enticing and fast moving and all those things, and barriers to entry virtually zero.
Great answer. Thank you. What's the one piece of advice that has helped during your career?
Well, it's that, actually. I mean, it's really which is counterintuitive to what people get told now. I mean, people get told now to flip from flower to flower and at an early age, not complete your university education if you're lucky enough to get a university. Not that many people believe they've been lucky enough to do that, but not to complete that, but go off and do things. But, again, going back to my father, he said, stick with the company, build a reputation, which is not what people do nowadays. People move. Maybe they're right. Maybe, the lives or corporate lives are so short. If the average company on the FTSE 100 lasts for whatever it is, 9 years, 12 years, 15 years, whatever it is, maybe things are so fast moving that moving from one thing to another is the right thing to do. But I think the best advice was focus on something that you find enjoyable. I mean, again, going back to what Mark McCormack said to me, or he did actually. He was a scratch golfer and he took his hobby into work. He met Arnold Palmer at Wake Forest University. Arnold needed somebody to manage his contracts and everything, and Mark decided to do that. But the boundary between work and play was almost non-existent. So I think I've been fortunate enough, and we'll get into that in the further questions, but fortunate enough not to regard there as being that much of a barrier between the two.
Yeah, okay. And very much related to that answer, I guess, is if you were starting out today, where would you like to begin?
Well, I think my horizons would be different. I mean, I don't want to be negative about the UK, but the UK is not a sideshow. It is still a really important economy. But on a world stage, if you look at things globally, you have to focus on countries like the US, countries like China, obviously, and India. And so my sort of gaze or my focus would probably be different. I probably would, if I was starting in, I think I'd probably go to the US. North and South America to me are full of tremendous opportunities, particularly South America. I would be also seduced, I think, by what's happening in Asia Pacific. So, despite obviously the difficulties currently of going to parts of Asia Pacific or China, but China and India, obviously, as I mentioned before, I think are critically important now and will be critically important in the future. And I think I would have honed my, I didn't speak code or I didn't learn code. And I certainly didn't speak Chinese. In fact, I'm like most British people, I'm appalling with languages. So I think probably, if I was starting again, I would focus very much on code and technology and engineering, and also on languages, particularly Chinese, in addition to English, and maybe Spanish as well. So I think that will be the difference. I mean, I was fortunate enough. I went to the US. I was partly educated or miseducated, as my mother used to say, in America. So I got more of a international view, if not a global view, because US in the 1960s, the US, although they talked about global business, I mean, Procter at that time was a big multinational with 10% of its revenues coming from outside the US. So global business had not really mushroomed like it did, when Ted Levitt got to grips with it in the 1980s with his globalization pieces. So that's what I think I would do differently.
Yeah, really good.
I just one thing I would certainly still do the education I did. I was lucky enough to go to a great university in the UK and one in America, and to do it immediately. I didn't do work experience, which maybe was a mistake, but I would have gone. Maybe the best thing would have been to have had 2 years of work experience in between first degree and postgraduate. But no, with that one qualification, I think that's what I'd do.
Yeah, it's good advice, and I know for sure that computer programming, the students now are definitely got access to far more than they used to have. I think languages we're still trailing behind. It's still difficult to find schools which do good. Chinese, for example, it's still very much French at a lot of these primary schools. But anyway, so moving on, what's your favourite thing about your current job?
Well, I think the growth, actually. I think the current S4 is, if I think back from it, such it was about globalization. WPP was about continuation of globalization and the beginnings of technology, and the sort of the early innings of technology. The great thing about S4 is that we continue to grow like a weed, and we're no longer a peanut, I guess. I was going to say grow like a mushroom, but I think that's the most exciting thing about it, is that, I'm not looking at my boots. I'm looking at the sky. And I think the clients that we work with, the fact that 50% of our business is technology or technology orientated is a spectacular advantage. And I don't want to lose that advantage. So we'll continue to maintain that technological focus. So we're not making technology, but we're deploying it for our clients in the most effective way to grow their top lines, which is the biggest issue that our clients face is top line growth. I mean, and that we're in the business of stimulating top line growth, and not just theirs, but our own too. So I think the biggest thing, your outlook on life is very much different if you're growing at 46% than if you're growing at 2 or 3%.
Yeah, it's an amazing story as well since you started S4 Capital. So just remind us, what's your market cap at the moment?
3 billion quid or $4 billion. It has been higher with the switch from, just talking to somebody before I got on this call about the switch from growth so-called growth to so-called value. We'll see how that pans out. I think as we move through this year, growth is going to reassert itself, and investors will become more consumed. And it really, GDP growth has driven. Everybody talks about Boris Johnson and the Prime Minister and the President of the US. Said we've had our best years ever, forgetting that the previous year was their worst year ever. In fact, on a 2-year stack, the UK economy is down, like some of the holding companies. And I mean, some of the holding companies have managed to stutter through 3% growth in 2 years. And, our 2-year stack on the announced figures that you've seen so far is about 65, 66%, albeit from a smaller base. So I think, Arif, the exciting thing is that, we're on our weekly call, as we had yesterday, on our global weekly call with our top people, the conversation is mostly about top line growth and how can we carve out a more impressive journey. So growth is the big thing.
Sure, and still having the energy and the vision to build something of such scale again is it's amazing.
Well, we're Coco de Mer, I think, is the biggest coconut. So, and we've gone from peanut to coconut or Coco de Mer. So I run out of analogies, but we're determined to be, I don't know, multiple Coco de Mer or a fivefold. But I think that on the other side, the thing that I miss is scale. So we're up to about now 8,200 people in 33 countries. So I'm very proud of the fact that it must be now about 20, 25, maybe 30,000 people in one way or another depend on for their livelihoods on S4 and its operating brand Media Monks. And that's something I'm very proud of, given the fact that we've done that in 3.5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And okay, for your own personal take now, what do you think is your own secret talent? Someone said, what do you...
Oh, blimey. That's a difficult one. I mean, I thought about that, and I guess bullheaded persistence is probably... I don't know whether that's a secret or not, but there are plenty of secrets. But no, I think probably it's persistence. It's not brain surgery, certainly.
Okay, great, thank you. On the media side now, where do you get your daily news from?
Well, when I wake up in the morning, I switch on Squawk Box. So whether I'm in London or New York or UK or US, so it would be I'm gazing at Ross Sorkin, Quick, and Kiernan, and I get my daily dose at the moment. They're talking about Charlie Munger. So I get my daily dose there, and here it's Steve and everybody at Jeff at Squawk Box here in the UK. And then I tend to read the daily financials online. I don't read them physically anymore. So the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times probably. Breaking views I read throughout the day, and there are some other news feeds that I look at. But I find actually if you've gone through pretty much, it's the Warren Buffett thing, isn't it? Really, you read the papers, and I look at some of the general press. So it would be the NYT or the Washington Post in the US, or it would be the Times or the Telegraph or the Guardian or the Independent, whatever it happens to be in the UK. On weeklies, I don't read as many weeklies as I used to. I used to, be religious. I would literally, The Economist, the Investors Chronicle, Fortune, Business Week, all these things. I would go through page by page. And one of the things I find irritating about online is that I'm of an age where I worry about whether I've read or looked at every headline. I don't read every article as to whether it interests me or not. I don't do as much of that as I used to. So through the day, I pick up the news feeds, and then in the evening, before I go to bed, I go to bed with Newsnight in the UK. The US, is a little bit more difficult. It used to be Charlie Rose, but it's a bit more difficult. to find the parallels there. But there are the news services there that I'll drift off to sleep watching. But here it's nice to go to bed with Emily Maitlis.
And which media brands are most important to you?
Well, the ones that I've said. I mean, I find
it doesn't have to be news brands. There may be, other lifestyle brands or international brands.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's what I said before. The borders between work and fun for me, and we'll come on to that even more. Really, so it would tend to be, CNN actually, when I'm traveling. In most of the places that I see, pick up a fair bit. I was, for example, been in South America quite a bit. Bloomberg I use quite extensively as well. In South America, in Argentina, in Uruguay, in Colombia, where I've been just recently, access really to CNBC is a little bit more limited. So I tend to look at CNN and Bloomberg more. But Bloomberg I used actually quite a lot. In South America, so it tends to be the financial brands that I focus on most. I listen a little bit to radio, but limited. When I walk to work, I might listen to. I would listen to Bloomberg, for example, Bloomberg Radio in the morning, or I might listen to actually Times Radio. Goodness knows why they don't take advertising, but maybe that's to come. So. I listen to some news brands, but essentially it tends to be around the financial or daily newspapers.
Yeah, interesting. I don't suppose you have time for any podcasts in your life, do you?
I do occasionally. Scott Galloway stuff I like that. I mean, it got a little bit too much. I mean, the Gareth Swisher sort of Galloway rants every week. Were good, but you get a little bit. I mean, it's the same. I mean, you it doesn't matter what they're talking about. Is the tone is the same, so it gets a little bit tiresome after a while. But it's quite entertaining, quite fun, and good practice if you ever get into a conversation with Scott Galloway, which I recommend you don't. But he can be extremely difficult. The one thing I remember, just as an aside, is it was at DLD in Munich. We were going to do a two-way conversation like this, and he was due to interview me, and I said to him in the green room, "Why don't we just interview one another?" And he said, "Yes, I'll open up." He said, "I'll give you a softball question." I said, "What's that?" He said, "No, I'll ask you about S4." Okay, so we get on the stage. There's about 300 or 400 people, and Sheryl Sandberg had just presented about an hour or so before, and he said, the first question was, "Should Sheryl Sandberg be fired?" And I actually went through the story that I just went through the story because I was a bit nonplussed, and I thought, well, I'll let him have it, just show his true colours anyway. But so I podcasts like that. Some books you sometimes get are interesting, or some articles, but generally it tends to be what I just said before.
And should Sheryl Sandberg be fired? No, joking. Now, how do you switch off?
I don't is the answer.
Yeah.
Right. What is it? It's the Shankly quote, which I haven't used for a number of years. It was something to the effect that football is not a matter of life and death. It's more important than that. So S4 is not a matter of life and death. It's more important than that. So the answer is I don't.
You've always never seen the boundaries between so-called work and so-called lifestyle, have you? It's one and the same for you.
No, I think that's fair, and I think that's probably what some people find rather tiresome. But yes, I think that's true. And sorry.
We did quite a lot of research at Bloomberg Media into entrepreneurial mindsets, and that was one of the top and consistent findings, actually. So you're not. Yeah,
I mean, you remember what I said about McCormack, or what my dad said. The boundary. You should do something that's fun. It's in a funny way, not a funny way. It's not work, right? So what you do is what you're interested in. So you asked me about why I'm interested in the industry, because it's interesting and stimulating, and it's ever changing, fast moving. You wake up in the morning, you read what's on your email feeds or whatever. and texts and everything, and things that you didn't think were going to happen when you went to bed the night before have happened. And so I think, and the other thing about our industry, which is really interesting, is that it touches so many things, right? It touches society, culture, politics, every corner of the world, every nook and cranny. And so it's relevant everywhere. It's relevant in every country, in every region, in every area of activity. It can be to B2C or B2B. I mean, it could be government. I mean, it's just all embracing. So it's a great industry from that part. I think the problem with it is is so old-fashioned, and we still look back. There are still so many people that look back with rose-tinted spectacles to what happened many, many years ago, whether it be in the era of Mad Men or whoever, Don Draper or whoever. So, but it's really interesting, and it never fails to entertain and stimulate, and it's not boring.
Not boring. Yeah, absolutely. And finally, the final question: who or what inspires you or keeps inspiring you?
Well, I was thinking about that. My dad, obviously, and then I think there was a man called Jules Thorne who founded Sir Jules Thorne, who founded Thorne Electrical. He came from Vienna between the two wars, Austrian emigre, and founded Thorne Electrical, built it up into a wonderful company. It's no longer, unfortunately, but was wonderful. And then Arnold Weinstock at GEC, also knew my father. These are two people who my father knew because he was in the radio and electrical industry. So it was really through him, through my dad, that I met them. And I think Arnold Weinstock would be somebody, interesting man, built the English GEC. Sadly, his son died from cancer, I think it was, when he was 40 years old, and nothing worse than a parent having to bury a child. And I had the opportunity of talking to him several times before he died, and about what he did and what he didn't do. And he was quite frank about that. So he was a sort of, Jules Thorne was a mentor. My dad was a mentor. So that, and then Phil Rees, who was a lawyer at Davis and Gilbert, one of the leading advertising lawyers, who was not just a lawyer or a counsel, but was a good friend. And after my father died, I guess to some extent he replaced him. And then I would say, if you look around now, I mean, I was thinking about who is it? I think Musk and Bezos are extraordinary, not just because of what they've done at Amazon and Tesla and indeed in other fields, but the fact they've done it in multiple fields. I mean, I can't conceive. I mean, I can just about focus on S4 or WPP or Sarges or whatever, but I can't conceive of anybody being able to do Tesla and go to the moon or Mars and do Hyperloop and everything else, and Bezos not doing dissimilar with the scale. And Richard Branson is sort of similar in a way, but the scale at which Bezos has operated at and Musk has operated is extraordinary. And you sort of get these sort of lights that go off or bells that ring. I mean, somebody said to me yesterday, how many companies in the UK, in the FTSE 100, are in the 100 most liquid companies, tradable companies in the world? And the answer is 0. So there are no companies in the FTSE 100 that would rank in the top 100 companies from a liquidity trading point of view. Tesla, well over a trillion over a trillion market cap, one of 6 companies, I think, over a trillion. Trades almost as much every day as major exchanges. So I think when one thinks about what these people have done, they come in for some criticism in various aspects, but the ability of their minds to morph from one to the other. And Musk is even more incredible because he hasn't retired as sort of CEO of Tesla. He carries on and yet is doing all the space exploration at the same time. Yuri Milner would be another one, the Russian internet investor, another one who also has managed to stretch his brain to many other areas. And the other person I'd love to have met, when people say who would you like, Golda Meir would be the person. I see that I think it's Helen Mirren is going to play her in a film or a series. But that's probably the one person that I would really like to have met.
That's really good answers. Thank you, Sir Martin. And obviously, you do know, just on that last question, you do know lots of the sort of media entrepreneurs and giants of their day. Any one of those which stand out as being inspirational?
Murdoch, head and shoulders. I mean, you'd have to say Bob Iger as well. I mean, on the other side of that deal. But I mean, Rupert Murdoch's timing and sort of sense of smell or feel is incredible. To have taken, you've got to remember the roots. I mean, everybody thinks about the UK and the Times and and the unions and everything, and then the US. But the roots of that company were in Australia. Which so it's quite extraordinary. So the fact that the Fox Disney deal was incredible, and look where it is now. So I think he understood it was a global business, and he was he was the first sort of global media mogul, I guess. So I would say, and I don't want to upset anybody else, but I think Iger as manager, his ability to, I mean, I remember I was in Uruguay actually, and I met somebody who ran one of the companies or was one of the people who ran one of the companies that Iger bought. And I remember a woman, and she told me, I said, what was it like? And she said, the way that Disney managed creative talent was absolutely superb. And, if she needed to get anything done, or there are any blockages or whatever, all she did was call Bob and he would get it done. So I would say, sort of entrepreneur, maybe Murdoch, and then owner, manager, if you want, I would say Iger.
That's great, Sir Martin. Many thanks for your time and
pleasure
launching My Media Life for us. And good to see you again.
All right, good to see you. Keep in touch and good luck with this initiative.
And that's it, the first edition of My Media Life. Thanks for joining us. It's always great value, isn't it? To find out more about the feature or indeed the World Media Group, it's all there online, worldmediagroup.com. There are a couple of hyphens in there, but I know you guys can work it out. But until the next time, do take care.